All right, welcome to the Rindge Planning Board meeting, August 6, 2019 at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can I have a roll call starting on my right here, please?
Kirk Stenson, Planning Director.
Samuel Boucher.
Dennis Casey.
Chairman Joe Nicadella. All right, so it looks like we have everyone here except for Jason. We have no alternates here, so basically everyone's free game for discussion and voting. Appointment of alternates, we don't have that. Announcements, communications, anything special?
Farmers market is still going. However, if you know anybody that's got their overflow, now they might be overflowing like vegetables and things, send them in. You could use them.
All right.
Very happy.
Where's it held? Where is it held?
It is held on West Rindge Common, which is just, I'm getting my directions here, north of the intersection of 119 and 202. It's a park with the iron bars around it next to the PTA building and real estate right there. On Thursdays from 3 to 6. We open, we went from Mother's Day to Columbus Day weekend. Well done.
All right, moving on here to the approval of minutes of July 2nd, 2019. If everyone had time to review them things, go over them, and if so, I'll listen
I
to
make
a
a
motion.
motion to approve the minutes of July 2nd.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention, Sam. Alright, so the minutes are approved on that. Full business, continued public hearings, we have none. Moving on to new business, public hearings. First one here, consideration of application for a minor site plan submitted by Hampshire Country School, 28 Patay Circle, Rindge, New Hampshire, for property located on Deer Run Lane, map 4, lot 30, in a residential zoning district. Applicant is seeking for approval for a 3-unit facility or faculty dormitory. So with that being said, Kurt can pass out the plans on it. I'll turn it over to Kurt.
Let's see, you want me to just go through the background?
Yeah, if you would.
So, Line Sync Architecture on behalf of the Hampshire Country School is submitted for approval of a minor site plan for the construction of a new 3-unit faculty dormitory building for the Hampshire Country School located at 45 Deer Run Lane. The following waivers, and there's a long list of them, have been requested by the applicant from the site plan regulations. There's a waiver request letter dated July 18th, 2019, with the justification for each of the waivers. From section 61A8, copy of any driveway permits required. Section 61B4, uses of abutting property shall be identified with the approximate location of the structures thereon within 200 feet of the subject property. Section 61B5, boundary lines, their sources, approximate dimension, bearings, and lot area in acres. Section 61B6, the location of all building setbacks required by the zoning ordinance. Section 1B9, plans for snow removal and storage, location will be consistent with the town of Grand Buttons Conservation District ordinance. Section 61B10, location of any existing proposed easements, deed restrictions, or covenants. Section 62B4, location and total number of parking spaces, loading spaces, and other similar facilities 5, landscaping plan describing the number, location, types, and size of all existing and proposed landscaping and screening, including fences and walls. Section 6, 2B7, the location, type, and nature of all existing and proposed signage. Section 6, 2B9, delineation of wetlands certified by a certified wetland scientist. Section 6, 2B10, soils data, types and boundaries based on the National Cooperative Soil Survey. Section 6, 2B12, the location and distance to the nearest fire hydrants and fire ponds. Section 6, 2B14, location of test pits and percolation tests, including test pit logs. And finally, the last one is section 6.2b16, base flood elevations and flood hazard areas as applicable. Available FEMA maps. Map 4 lot 30 is bisected by a zoning district line, is located in both, the property is located in both the residential agricultural zoning districts. Educational facilities or dormitory/housing not allowed use. However, New Hampshire Country Schools obtained a special exception for the expansion of the existing non-conforming use, 9 dormitory units on this specific property. My understanding is that's actually the only thing on that property. It's a 212 acre parcel. Just in regards to the waivers requested, it is my opinion that waivers are not required from section 6.1A8 as the driveway is existing, therefore a driveway permit is not required, it's already an existing driveway. From section 6.1B10, as the applicant has affirmed in their letter that there are no known easements, deed restrictions, or covenants on this lot, so that information is provided. And from section 6.2B14, as the applicant has provided the required information in regards to test pits and percolation tests on the septic system design plan, which has been submitted. And also from section 2B16, as the base flood elevations and flood hazard areas are not applicable to this lot, so therefore should make sure of anyways. It is my opinion that the other waivers requested are reasonable requests and should be granted based on the reasons supplied by the applicant. In my opinion, the applicant has provided the planning board with the information necessary to make an informed decision on the application. And I recommend the planning board accept the application as complete, subject to granting the waivers and the public hearing. So I don't know if you want to turn that over to them in regards to going over the waiver requests before accepting the application. We can cover those, but most all of them fall into the criteria of they're in the middle of a 212 acre parcel.
Yeah, so who's here to get, you wanna just go over basically what the plans are and your thoughts on the waivers and stuff?
Sure. Can I have one of those documents? Just a look.
Oh, I don't think the letter's in there.
The waiver, with the waiver thing
Yeah, it's not in the agenda.
Right here?
Yeah.
It should be right here, this one.
No, the
No, that's
letter.
my memo.
Oh, okay.
I just want to be reading the same
Oh,
thing
yeah.
you are.
Yeah,
Well, this
well,
is
this
just
is, this is what we just read.
Yeah.
but it's not what you wrote.
Oh, it's not what I wrote. Oh, that's why you're asking me, sorry. I think that was
I wasn't rewriting what you wrote.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So can you just state your name for the record and,
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks. Joseph Sincata.
alright, thank you.
And I'm the architect for the project.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, I'm the guy. And we're both here, this is Vernon Folk, the headmaster.
Alright, thank you.
Sure. So the parcel is so large that we didn't think it was going to impact any neighbors whatsoever. Where, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have a net increase in occupants through this. We're basically housing faculty from where they were to a better location here. And that's why it was approved by your colleagues last month.
Yeah.
It's just low impact. So setbacks didn't matter before. As snow removal, as Kurt said, didn't matter. The location of existing and proposed easements, you accepted that. Location and total number of parking spaces, we're maintaining the existing, so there's no change there. The landscape plan, we do provide a plan that shows where the parking area is going to be. There's really no change. It's just number location, type and nature of existing proposed signage. There is no, signage to be provided. There'll be an address number on the building for 911. That's it. Soils data, we do have a soil survey from because we're modernizing the septic field so that it will comply to more stringent standards that are today. So it's being updated, and your towns will approve that. The location, this is the nearest fire hydrant, where there are no ponds, a lot of them. So
The fire department has planned for a long time to put one into their pond, and we're very open to it, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Location and test pits, that's in the site plan that was approved already for the septic. And number 14, the base flood elevations. This is not in the flood hazard district. So. Any questions on this?
Does the board have anything they wanna discuss or questions about?
No, pretty thorough response.
Yeah, just from my standpoint, it's over 1,000 square feet is what kicks it into a minor site plan as far as the building area, but it's not by much, so it's pretty straightforward.
Alright, if the board doesn't have anything more discussion on it or anything, then I'll if someone wants to entertain a motion to accept the application, we can do that.
I make a motion to accept the Hampshire Country School faculty dwelling minor site plan is substantially complete and to grant the following waivers as presented. 61B 4569, 62B 4579, 10, 12. I think I got
So we have a motion on that, we have a second, we're second from Kim. So we have a motion and a second on that, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Alright,
So do you like the way I shortened that?
so, the application is, accepted, so, regarding the application, Mr. Decker,
Yep, so again, the proposed project is located on tax map 4, lot 30, which is in both the residential and the residential agricultural zoning district. There are no public infrastructure or public utilities proposed. Again, the subject parcel is 212 plus or minus acres. And the application is for the construction of a new 3-unit faculty dormitory. It's my understanding that there will be no expansion in the number of students or faculty for the Hampshire Country School. Access to the site will be along Deer Run Lane, which is a private driveway which services the existing dormitories for the Hampshire Country School on the subject parcel. And the New Hampshire DES septic field has been obtained and is in the file for the septic system.
alright, does the, board have discussion on any of that stuff about the application to the architect or anybody?
Yeah, no, where is this the, I was just wondering where the zoning change is. I know it's usually around the ponds, the res to res ag.
I
And
think-
is it on here? Is that
So,
maybe it?
so this is, so where are we? This is Island Pond, this is Deer Run Lane, that's where the new thing comes in. And I believe the line crosses somewhere in this area, from residential to agriculture.
Oh,
Do we have anything on that, Chris?
I can grab the zoning map. It's not, there's no defined location of it. It's just a line drawn more or less through the.
arbitrary,
arbitrarily through the
okay,
property.
never mind. I
So
was
that's
just,
not like it followed an old boundary line or anything like that. It's just, and it has jogs in it, so I don't.
probably around the pond.
Yeah. When it was said and done, it really didn't make a difference as far as because it's not allowed in either district. So,
Yeah,
but I can grab the zoning map. Yeah.
no, that's not, yeah, I was just
So
curious.
this
if
is,
that's what it was.
this is the subject parcel.
Okay, so this one is that. So we're talking about this land in here.
Yeah, it's this big parcel here.
So white is res ag,
Yeah.
yellow is residential. So it's,
Yeah, it's just, exactly, it just kind of.
Any other questions with the board? If not, I'm gonna open it up to the public. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to the public if they have any questions, just please begin to state your name. So the public is pretty noisy tonight, so we're gonna close the public hearing on that in a bit. No response on the public. So with that being said, we wanna propose a motion to accept what we've been discussing here for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I just, you know, it's so far removed from, you know, having an impact on that's things, they had to get, yeah, it's EDA approval to. How come this board's so silent? It's always me.
Sam, are you good? Questions over there?
No, I'm good now.
Alright,
Okay. So I make a motion to grant approval of the Hampshire Country School, faculty dorm minor site plan application as presented with these, conditions. All applicable governmental permits shall be obtained prior, during, and after recording of the decision. The applicant shall be made aware that any conditions placed on the site plan through other governmental or permitting agencies are hereby included in this approval. All construction, site work, and site operations shall be consistent with the most recent set of septic system construction plans by Septic Pro, dated 5/1/2019 with a 6/2/2019 revision date.
alright, so we have a motion on there, a second on that from anybody?
Second.
So, we got a second over here, I guess I heard Holly first, sorry.
We fought on that one.
So we have a motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So, this passes,
Thank you.
so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can you get some better digs for your faculty?
Much better.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of improvement.
We saw the
out there.
whole one, we saw the whole one's already done, so this is necessary. No,
Yeah.
it's, you know, we had the mixed dorm with faculty living in it, and then the fire department did some drills in it and stuff, so it had to come down. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Alright, here, moving on to, new business here, number 2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah, appreciate it, yeah.
Thank you.
Is Andre?
He's not here, so if you wanna jump,
Jump down,
planning on.
was he planning on being here?
That was my understanding, he was gonna be here.
Alright, so we're gonna move on to the, so report of officers, subcommittees, we're gonna hold off on the discussion on item number 2, planning office report. He can do it just now.
Oh.
First, quick meeting.
Yeah, yeah, if you wanna sign in, we're jumping on yours. Alright, so moving on here again to the, new business here. Item number 2, discussion with Andre Aho, ATA Construction on previously approved 14 lot planned unit residential subdivision on a property located at East Menominee Road, map 3, lot 72 with residential and agriculture zoning district. So at this time, if, Kirk can kind of fill us in where we're at on this. I know
So-
there's been some emails going around, so.
Yeah, so I will try and summarize as quickly and easily as I can. There's just that Andre has started, construction out there on the, roadway for the project. It was started in 2007, I believe, and stopped when things crashed. It was resumed, or started over again, so to speak, with construction. And, so I just went over with Andre, in fact, I think Mike was the one who first brought it to my attention. And then a couple of inquiries in regards to, what the conditions were and that type of thing. So Andre and I have been back and forth a couple times, spoke on the phone a couple times just in regards to, getting the conditions met in regards to the performance guarantee was required, homeowners association, the open space and common land being permanently protected, and the vesting part of it, I don't see as an issue, from the standpoint of the current, PERD and zoning is not any more restrictive than it was previously, so vesting doesn't really change that from that standpoint. And then obviously the phasing was, whatever, between 9 and 12 years ago. So those are the few things that we went over, and then just as far as for, in regards to the permits that he has, being expired at this point in time, and we talked about that, and let Andre address that, in regards to the wetlands permit, that was just for the driveway, the one of the driveways or shared driveway, not for the actual road construction, so. But I know there's been questions, it was approved for a 14 lot, planned unit residential development, single family homes, is what the approval was for. I have not been able to actually locate in the office the latest plans, which is not entirely surprising, but I have the previous version before that, and I did find them online on the registry, and based on the notes, the difference is they added the approval numbers, from DES and that type of stuff to the plan, so. The plans that I have here are what's shown online in regards to lot location and roadway construction, that type of things. But that's a quick overview.
Alright, so, at this time, if you want to kind of fill us in what your thoughts are with it, and plans obviously with stuff that's expired and so forth.
Do you have,
I would say, I didn't know what you guys had, so I brought 5 overview plans. You guys can share some, and then I have the roadway as well.
second thinking that there was others that weren't part of this.
That's it. Well, there was some stuff that was approved
Separate.
some years before this particular subdivision.
People,
Some,
I was there.
yeah, some road frontage lots, exactly.
That's, yeah, so that's what I was thinking is that there were
Yeah.
other, that you had broken this off separately.
Right.
Okay.
So as, as Kirk said, we started, after this got approved, we started the road work in 2007, 2008, and the market tanked on us, so we didn't dare to continue on. We probably got, I don't know, maybe a third of the way done with the site work at best. Okay, and then we just held off, and it's been a lot of years that have passed. And as the market, the market has been improving. So this past spring of 19, I contacted Mike Cloutier and met with him and told him that I was gonna be, the summer, I wanted to finish this road work. And he said, I said, was there any concerns or anything? And he says, my only concern is I am gonna be paving that road at some point in the summer, so I wanna make sure we're on the same page and not messing each other up kind of thing, So I told him I'd let him know once work started out there. And so once work started in the middle of July, I contacted Mike again and said, hey, just wanted to let you know I started the road work. Can we set up an appointment on site to come check things out and let me know, that way we're on the same page and I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be doing and that kind of thing. So what Mike did is he contacted Kirk instead, because I got the impression afterward that maybe he wasn't real comfortable taking this on his own without consulting Kirk. And so he met with Kirk, and Kirk, then you looked up the approvals, it sounds like, and found out that the wetlands permit, the wetlands crossing permit for one of the driveways, one of the driveways in the back had expired. And the site-specific permit had expired. So I had discovered that about a week before Mike and Kirk met, because I had called the engineers and told them that the people that did the plans that you're looking at for me, and told them that I was out there working, and told them that I was gonna need them to stake the center line of the road for me, and lay out there's one drainage crossing at a low point in the road here, where we have 2 catch basins, that's, between lot 10 and 11, right on the property line there. We have 2 catch basins and about 150 feet of pipe that we're gonna be putting in just to collect the water from, that's coming down the edges of the roadway. There's no wetlands associated with it or anything like that, but. So I'd asked him to come out, lay out the road and lay out that stuff for me, and at that point he said, just wanna let you know the wetlands crossing permit has expired and the site-specific permit has expired. And I said, so what do I have to do? And he said, well, if you're not doing the driveway right now, you don't have to worry about the wetlands permit because, that will be necessary when you do the driveway. And I said, okay, so I'll hold off on that because I don't have any plans of doing that right away. And I said, what about the site-specific permit? And he says, I don't know, it's kind of a gray area, he said. He said, it kind of depends how the town of Rindge looks at it. And so he says, probably what you should do is, he said, probably just do what you're doing and see what they say. Basically, that was the advice he gave me. So I continued on, and of course, Kirk brought it to my attention. And so, in doing more homework on it, it sounds like that site-specific permit is required if you're disturbing more than 100,000 square feet of earth or of surface area. And so, if I don't do the work for the driveway in the back, which is this long driveway here, see, on lots 19 and 20, my numbers are very close to that 100,000 square feet. But if you calculate where I have to do that drainage away, it is over 100,000, including that drainage way. So I called the engineers and I said, well, what if I've already started that swale. That swale is all done. The catch basins are going in tomorrow morning, and the pipe for it. I said, well, what if I loam it and hydro-stabilize that area right there? Will I be underneath that 100,000 square feet for the requirement of a site-specific permit? And you said you would be. So that's the direction I'm heading in and hoping you guys are okay with that, I guess. So that's how.
But when you put the driveways in, you're gonna exceed it.
I'll be all stabilized. By the time I put driveways in, my road will be paved and sides will be all stabilized and I won't have.
Alright, so, thank you. At this time, if the board could just kind of discuss what we have here and.
Just to address Roberta's comment, it is done that way. So when you pull an alteration of change permit form of the site-specific permit for a subdivision, you don't count the lot area, you don't count the disturbance on the lots, driveways, etc. It's strictly for the construction
Of the road.
of the road. The intention is, and always has been with DES, is that the roadway gets constructed first before you begin the construction of houses. Does it always work that way? Nope. Do they know it always doesn't work that way? Yep. It's just, it is the way it is, but for the most part, you're not beginning the construction until the roadway is paved and you've got things stabilized. So that is the way they do look at that, the calculations for subdivisions. It's strictly the drainage and construction of the roadway is calculated for your site-specific permit. And what's different, or I guess interesting about it, is from a drainage calculation standpoint, you actually still do account for houses on the lots, even though that area for the houses doesn't count towards your area disturbance.
So wasn't one required at the time?
What's that? Yeah, so basically, I mean, going over this whole thing, just so the board understands, obviously, when this thing was approved, it needed a site-specific or alteration of terrain permit, okay? And according to the state standards and according to the standards right now, it still requires a site-specific, because nothing has changed. Whether he started work on it beforehand or after, or something was done, it still requires it, and I can't see how you doing something and saying now it's under that, because obviously it required it then, it still requires it now.
Well, it required it, including the driveway work. If I did the driveway work right away for the wetland.
Well, the wetlands crossing is a separate thing.
Well,
That's a
no,
separate
that was
item.
part of the calculation, because that was part of the approval, and that's not, so this obviously, that's a big area that we're disturbing to get up through there, and I'm not touching that.
Yeah, so, I mean,
So
obviously.
it has changed.
Yeah, well, either way, there's a permit that's expired from December 15th, 2007. And right now, you're saying you don't need one because you're.
I didn't say that, I
format.
didn't say I don't need one, I said I'm under the 100,000, so, it's a gray area, and
So,
hoping you
I
see
mean,
the same way.
obviously, if the engineers that you spoke with basically were like, it's kinda like, you know, we don't really know, we don't wanna say this, that, or whatever, I mean, I'm a developer, you know that, and I've done projects that I needed it, and obviously, this is a project that obviously needs it for some reason, unless there's calculations where you came in from Bedford Design with a new plan that says the thing's 85,000
I can
square
show
feet
you,
or
that's what I'm saying,
whatever.
so that's what I'm saying, if you allow me 2 days to loam and hydroseed that area, I'll be under the 100,000.
Well, yeah, but if you're doing work on something that was approved as a whole, that doesn't, you know what I'm saying? How does that fit in the criteria? It's like, if I go and build 200 feet of road over here, now I'm not building 1,000-foot road, it's only 800 feet, because you let me build 200 right now, so your criteria is I need a permit for 1,000 square feet of road, but if I build 200 right now, then I don't need any for the
That's
rest
not
of
what
it.
I'm saying, and I said I wasn't doing the driveway.
But basically, right now, if the drainage calculations going through the pipe, obviously, is part of all what that does, and you grass it all over, it still needs a permit, because the whole thing needs a permit.
No, but
That's the way it was
you would
approved.
be under 100,000, see, if it's stabilized now, that's not disturbed area. It's specifically for disturbed
But you
area.
started something with an expired permit.
I understand that, I didn't realize it when I started it, but I found out.
And it's
while
not
I was-
like it expired last month, it's
Yeah, and I just didn't-
2007.
I get it.
So, does the board have some discussion on this?
Yeah, so I do have a question, what is the, application procedure for alteration of terrain?
What do you mean?
It goes to the state,
Correct.
we don't have.
Correct, we don't do anything with it. I
It's
wasn't following
actually-
what your question was. Yeah, it goes to, it's an application to the Water Division of DEF.
Yeah,
It's actually different, see, it used to be back when this got approved, there was something that was called a site-specific permit.
correct,
And now, the term has changed and so it's a little different.
yeah, I know it's the 100,000, but if the original application included the driveways, which are long, because I know it was discussed at the time with the wetlands crossing, you know, that you were gonna go way deep in the property.
Right.
That's why I'm just wondering if not doing those, which those will probably be the last lot you sell.
Yeah, right,
If that changes the calculation.
it does, and that's why I approached it that way.
Yeah, it would, in other words, because you can do that to include it's a shared driveway, correct?
Yes, it is, yes, it
Yeah,
is.
to include the shared driveway, or you wouldn't have to include it, but, you know, at this point in time, you know, those lots are approved with the driveway going through a wetland crossing. Now, I don't think it's a big deal as far as for, you know, getting that re-permitted for the wetland crossing, and he obviously can't do anything with it, he understands that.
Correct.
For any sort of wetlands filling, before doing that, but if he's taking a risk that those lots, you know, I think it's a minimal risk, but like I said, I don't see it as a big deal to get that wetland permit reinstated, but, you know, but if he's not including that as part of that, and he doesn't have to,
Didn't that, wetlands crossing change for driveways? Didn't, since this was approved back in '07, I thought we've had some zoning changes on wetlands, the wetlands ordinance.
but you're still allowed to.
No, you have to, yeah, you have to
Exactly,
be
for
allowed
access,
to access your property.
Yeah, so that doesn't change that part.
Yeah, but I think it, you know,
So-
it used to be a lengthier process than it is now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, anything that I found as far as for whether it's a PERD regulation, zoning regulation, this really hasn't been a lot from a zoning standpoint that affects this at all, that would have any effect on this, it's not like we change lot sizes or frontage or anything like that, as a PERD, so anything that I found, research that I did in that regards, I don't see anything from a zoning standpoint that affects this at all. It would still meet all the current requirements, therefore that's where I was saying vesting language doesn't really make a difference. If, you know, if it was something where, you know, take the extreme example where at the time this was approved, it was 2 acre zoning, and then it changed to 3 acre zoning. He's got 2 acre lots, then he would no longer be vested, and he'd have to resubmit and do something different for lot 3. But that's not the case here.
So, do you think that the road that goes in for the wetlands crossing, okay,
The road or the driveway?
the road, driveway, something to drive a car on,
Sure.
over wetlands, down here on these lots right here, Kurt, taking away the square footage of that right there, does that take away enough so it doesn't qualify for 100,000? Or that's a separate deal?
I don't know, I ran some rough numbers just stealing off the plan, but I don't have the CAD file to know that. And I came up with like 103,000 square feet, so it's very close, but like I said, I don't know.
I asked that question of my engineers, and they said, including the area that was disturbed to put that swale in, that I just told you about earlier, it is over 100,000. But if that area was stabilized and taken out of the calculation, it for sure would be under the 100,000.
So whose actual, I know that when we do approvals, it's subject to obtaining all of the governmental permits that are required. Who is it that makes the determination whether one is required or not?
It's the engineer. So, I'll give you an example. When I was at Bedford Design, it was a number of years ago, we had a project that literally the area disturbance was 99,800 square feet. And the town, I believe it was the town of Londonderry, but don't quote me on it, said, no, you have to do an alteration of terrain for that. Alteration of terrain, DES basically finally wrote a letter, that's what we ended up having to do, that said, look, it's under 100,000 square feet, we don't wanna see it. And they finally agreed to do that. So, if it's, that the determination of what the disturbed area is based on your grading plans. And the engineer does make that determination of whether it's required.
So our approval stands that if governmental permits are required, they be obtained.
Correct, that's the standard language we use today, it's not in there, it wasn't in the notice of decision back then, but I mean, it's implied that it's, I guess.
Well, it's expired because it was needed then, but what you're saying is it wasn't read in the language of this last approval?
And it may have been because they were already submitted and approved at that point in time. But I don't know that.
Well, didn't you say, I thought I was reading what,
The approval date.
okay, so that you've got conditions. I was reading your synopsis.
So,
Well, I guess that from this standpoint, the reason that wasn't on there as far as for governmental permits is because the latest revision date on the plans is from 2006, which added the state permit numbers on the plans. The notice of decision is from 2007. So just over a year later, the actual planning board approval came down. So you wouldn't say you need a site-specific permit or you need a state subdivision approval, or you need that, because it's already written on the plan. The numbers of approvals were on the plan. So that's why that'd be my assumption as to why it's not listed. If you look on the overview plan on notes 10, 11, and 12, list the permit numbers.
so, basically, so the board understands, obviously, the project is started. They're putting in a drainage way that potentially, when it's stabilized, could bring it under the 100,000 square feet. Before it got started, a month and a half or 2 months ago, permits were expired, obviously on a project that was approved, but they're putting in the drainage of it to make it under it. So is it valid to say that he needs to get a site-specific, or that now because he started it and put that in there, that it falls under the criteria of 100,000 square feet, or do we want to get more information with numbers from an engineer showing some facts, and basically this is where, right now it's up for discussion, that's what's at the table right now, it's a discussion meeting. And And obviously, he'd have to come to the board with some kind of application or something to ask for an approval of, you know, of a new decision, because right now it doesn't meet the criteria that's out there. So, obviously, there's a number of other things on here too that obviously need to be discussed, because when you go through a road that potentially could become a town road, there's bonding involved, there's inspections involved where the developer would have to put up some kind of bond money to pay for an outside engineer to come out, wherever the town chooses to have come out and do inspections, where they would get paid out of there, so the town can have some source of guarantee that it's being properly done, so that way when it gets turned over, they're not boring the road out and core drilling stuff. So obviously there are other issues that are on here that, you know, need to be dealt with and discussed, as well.
Okay. Thank all the planning board, it's the first time I've ever run into this, from, something this old.
It's
Trying
happened
to wrap my
several
brain
times.
around it, it is going to be a little bit of a gray area until we get a full handle on. Now, what's the process of the permit for the
wetlands permit?
not the wetlands, but the overall
Alteration
permit,
permit, the alteration
the
permit.
alteration terrain? What's that permit?
I mean,
You
Kurt
go
should
to the
know,
state to get
obviously, he would have to just submit these plans just like he did the first time around and, you know, update them if they have different criteria, you know, and calculations that is, but obviously the thing that comes into play is, you know, do you include a drainage thing that was started and possibly underseeded and grassed in tomorrow in it or not, and obviously, cause it was started
Well,
before,
that's-
you know what I'm saying, so obviously,
Well, that's where I was going with that, because after tomorrow, he's not gonna need one. It's gonna be under the 100,000 square feet,
well, I mean,
Possible.
potentially, we don't have any numbers.
potentially.
Because those findings
But
are
it's
based
kinda-
on what they see when they go.
I know, but it's just kinda like the gray area, because it's
Yeah.
like it's expired, then you go and do this part right here, then it brings it under it, and it's like, what do you do, you know? I mean,
But the overall project was completely approved by the planning board in 2007.
with the permits in place, and obviously there's two permits that are expired with the state.
And with all the other, you know, I've read it, so all the rest of it is still.
So what's with, the alteration of terrain, I know if it's a huge project, you know, so not really that big of an area, but does the state come and inspect? It's just fill out the form and
Submit the plan.
They, I believe now they look for a, letter from the design engineer at the end of the project stating that it was built according to plan, or any changes, that were made do not affect the, drainage analysis and design.
so basically, it's the engineer and the developer have to abide by the plans that are submitted as they do to the planning board.
Correct.
So it's basically an extra layer of nobody that comes and checks it.
Correct, but from a standpoint of being now requiring an engineer, I know at least for myself, I'm not stamping something and writing a letter stating something, put my stamp on it.
Correct.
Unless it's a true statement, I just, you know what I mean, and I don't think I don't know of any engineers that I work with that are willing to do that either, it's just, there's no client that's worth throwing away a license for.
Right, so if, you know, if there's, an escrow account set up for the engineering review, there's gonna be two engineers that look at it, both the one that did the design and the one that comes in and checks the progress of the development. Because he's gonna build it to the plans.
Correct, yeah, and basically the inspections to make sure it's built to town spec, and the intent of that is so that when it
In
comes
case.
time to accept it, the roadway committee meets, and their part of that is looking for a recommendation from an engineer that says it was built to town standards. It's much easier to witness whether it's built to town standards while it's being built than it is to try and go back out and figure it out later.
As has happened.
Correct.
So it's just an extra layer of not really double checking. With the alteration of terrain.
As a planning board, what can we do for this gentleman tonight? Or what are we going to advise him to do? Or do we advise him to do anything?
Well, right now, I mean, looking at it, project's moving forward with 2 permits that are expired.
Well,
And-
one doesn't really count.
Yeah, one doesn't matter, but it was part of the same project.
Yeah.
And secondly, obviously, we don't have any statement from the engineer saying if he grasses this thing in tomorrow, he's under the threshold of 100,000 square feet.
I can get that.
Well, that's what, Andre said he could
So,
get that.
so, you know, and obviously facts and details, right now, we're just discussing something that's already been started. It was approved 2007. I mean, you know, is there an application process or something for this, Kurt, and come in and say, this is what we got, and what does it wanna do with it, or what's the deal? I mean, obviously, we don't run into this kinda stuff like this, where you start something before, and then you run under the threshold, and then you finish it up later.
Well, I think
It's
that,
happened many times. It's
I
like-
mean, obviously, this would have been all done in 2008 if the market had held up. I wouldn't have held back unless I had to, obviously, you know, it wasn't like I planned this out or something, you
You know, I
know?
was going one at that time.
Yes.
Pretty
Yeah,
rough.
so I mean, the approval, I mean, it's an approved subdivision,
Yeah, that's
So-
not the question. I mean,
and,
the subdivision's approved.
you know, I think that, you know, there's a couple of conditions that, you know, there's no impact fees anymore.
so I guess that my thoughts are is that obviously the performance guarantee needs to be in place, whether that's a bond, cash bond, or whatever that is, that needs to be in place. Andre actually emailed me, that was a homeowners.
Yeah, actually, when Kurt first asked me, he says, do you have a homeowner association set up? And I said, oh, I thought we had started, you know, done all the original paperwork, but I don't know if it was recorded, so I called Jeff Crocker, who has always done those for me, those documents for me. I said, do you remember working on this for me? He says, no, I don't remember working on it, but let me look. 5 minutes later, he calls me back, he says, I found the whole document. He says, I'll email it to you. He says, but I don't think it ever got recorded, because I don't see it recorded anywhere, so I did forward it to Kirk, and I could, you know, if it's okay with the town, the way it is, then I would just go get it recorded. And then the condition number 3, where it requires the open space to be permanently protected, that's actually stated in this document, very specifically, that common land will be permanently protected, and so that would be recorded if this was recorded, so.
And in this case, at this point in time, it didn't require, you know, the notice of decision did not require town council review. So
Right,
at this
I
point
was
in
just
time,
gonna ask that, cause I can't remember.
Yeah, it just says the PERD is required to establish a homeowners association as a condition of approval. The articles of incorporation and bylaws of the corporation, association, and nonprofit entity shall be recorded in the Cheshire County Registry of Deeds. So at this point in time, it doesn't say that has to be reviewed by town council. So I don't know that the planning board can require that, because there's no application, so I don't think at this point in time we're giving any authority, other than the fact that there needs to be one, based on notice of decision. So again, I would say, you know, performance guarantee or bond, whatever you want to call it, needs to be in place. The homeowners association needs to be recorded, which Andre stated includes the language as far as permanently protecting the open space. The vesting thing is not there, it's not an issue. And then the other thing would be, you know, what the planning board wants to do as far as for inspections. And again, I think it's I guess a major gray area, because it wasn't required as part of the notice of decision. You know, I think it's in Andre's best interest to have it, put up the money for escrow for inspections, and if he's looking to have the road.
Yeah,
taken
and
over.
obviously that was, it was approved that way, and that is my intent clearly, and I think that should be done that way too.
It can save money in the long run.
It just makes sense for everybody.
Yeah.
And then in regards to the permits, I would, for me, like I said, as an engineer for the project, if the engineer for the project, if there was a letter in the file that stated that an alteration of training permit is not required due to the fact that the driveway is not being built, then the planning board's covered at that point in time. I don't think the planning board can make the decision, say, no, you don't need it.
Correct.
You know what I mean, from the standpoint of, it's either over 100,000 square feet or it's not. The planning board really has no way of determining that without having some sort of information provided.
Yeah, I think we need something from them, just basically clarifying and stating it, because right now we have something that says it needs it. So if we have something that backs up, the facts on it, obviously, however he does the language on it, obviously, if he can't do that, then it needs it. I mean, that's all there's to it.
I agree.
And obviously, either way, putting in a driveway that requires wetlands thing, it needs it then, it needs it now. That's, so what does the board wanna do with, like, a fee amount for like money? Obviously, is that something you're interested in doing, is putting up some kind of fund that the money can be paid out to an engineer that the town
Well,
says?
typically,
okay?
basically the bond or the letter of credit, whatever we choose to do, typically is for just guaranteeing that the work gets done.
Correct.
And then there might be a separate escrow account set up for paying the engineer, I think.
For inspections.
Yeah, they're two
Two
separate things.
separate things.
Yeah,
Two
yeah,
separate
there
things.
is, that's what I'm saying, I mean, are you in favor of having, obviously, that separate one for the money to pay for it, for your interest, so that way when you do turn it over again, we're not digging into it, cause it's easier to do it as it's being built, you know what I'm saying, than after. Because if the town was gonna take it over and you didn't do none of that, then they're gonna have someone digging holes and coring it versus saying the gravel's going down properly and whatever. Obviously, but it's gonna take money being held in an escrow account.
No, I'm gonna do it right, I mean, that's why I say an engineer should be involved, I want him to approve everything we're doing, that way everybody's comfortable that we're doing things the right way. And so, I think I either get a letter of credit, or I put X number of dollars in the bank for you guys, and when I complete certain things, that money comes out, cause that stuff is done, and done in a good way, because an engineer has okayed it, that way, that work it's guaranteed to be done, and I can't, leave it undone.
Yeah, and I don't know what the fee schedule is for that.
As far as for what?
Setting up an escrow account for,
Typically in the past, it's been, get an estimate from the review engineer, the inspecting engineer, of this is gonna cost X, this is an estimated fee, whatever. And provide a check for that, and put it into an escrow account. As far as for the performance guarantee, as far as for the road work, getting down to the separate thing, that there is typically, we've done two, I don't think I've seen it anyways, we've done two different cost estimates. And then, the planning director would go over that with Mike, just to make sure he thought it was, enough money.
I don't see anything in here about a performance bond for the road.
It's the first one, a performance guarantee should be made for
Oh, I went right by that.
Yep. Completion of the street work and utilities completed around.
Oh, right, yeah, I was reading the rest of the stuff. Okay. So that's three things then. We need a statement from the engineer on the alteration of terrain. Performance bond on the road completion, and an escrow account for, if you choose to do so, on the inspections.
So now the board, Kirk, does the board decide on, like, who would be somebody that would represent the town to do that, or would you work for the town to do an inspection on the road? Like a side engineer for this thing, or would they hire somebody else to do it, or what?
That's up to the board. I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah, it's been Club Harbor a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. then it's
But
coming
it
back.
doesn't matter who it is, I mean, Kirk could be the inspecting engineer on the thing.
And I'm,
So,
I'm
as a
fine with that too.
subcontractor.
So.
You know what I'm saying? He'd just be a subcontractor and get paid through that escrow amount.
Oh, I know, that's, you know, that's possible.
But, I mean, obviously the board has to okay.
Yeah, and I do recall Buck Harper's done a lot of that for us in the past.
I know, it's
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
It's like,
Well, would you be willing to take that job on if it was asked of you or no?
I mean, it's, I don't know, it's like anything else, you just make it work, but, I mean, it's in town, so it's not a big deal to be able to do, but that is up to the board of how it, like I said, it's been, I don't know who's done it before, did, SVE do it at one point in time, Rob Hitchcock maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know if he did or not, I think Clough Harbor's the one,
Yeah.
I know they did Eastview.
mhm.
Did you have it done with the?
T.F. Moran did one like the already driving Kim Report, so.
Okay, yeah.
Like T.F. Moran, but that was back in what, 2000 or something like that?
Yeah.
2002, yeah.
So that's what, 1, 2, 3 possibilities?
Yeah, and actually, it's the town's choice, it's the board's choice, you know, who can be hired. And, you know, I think that, you know, Kirk, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to make money, you know, on other things.
Yeah, no, that's fine with me. I mean, I would say that, to me, I mean, I'm in favor of Kirk going, and he already knows what's going on with the thing, and, you know, obviously, like he said, nobody's gonna go and stamp something or write a letter saying basically something's happening without his, you know, his stamp behind it, or his letterhead, or whatever like that, no matter who it is, and it's right here in town, local. I mean, you know, I'm in favor of that. I don't know if the board wants to, you know, put that out there right now, that he would be the hired, you know, overseer for the road construction on it, and have to write a letter to the town for it, and obviously be reimbursed through the escrow on it, or do they wanna go with somebody else?
Kirk can't hire himself, so we
Yeah.
have to make that
Are we
decision.
putting it out there for discussion?
It's, I mean, it's,
I mean, for me, it's a little too close from a professional perspective. I think with these outside for with good results, it leaves him independent to critique anything that needs to be critiqued, and then we don't have to figure out how we're gonna cover that piece, because he can't then critique his own work, and it puts us in a
yeah, no,
position,
it's,
so. I mean,
Yeah, I see that,
I think
except I
that's-
think that Kirk has the best interest of the town. And, you know, I hate to say, he can be a hard ass about some things.
Well, and that's why I think, and keeping him on the role that he's in,
But he would not have anything to do with it, Kim. He would not be going out there overseeing the road.
no, I understand that, I understand.
It's, as pointed correctly.
Correct. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Anyway.
anybody else?
So there would be no conflict? You don't see any conflict with him being hired as a
Well,
property?
it's not, I mean, right now, the whole thing, to me, it's just, it's a discussional consideration is what came to it. We don't have anything on the table really for any kind of, you know, obviously there's some gray areas that we wanna get some letters back in from somebody, and obviously, I don't think at this time, is it anything that needs to be a formal application put in for it, or we just need to straighten out these items right here, and,
I think it's
keep
just straight
moving
these
on.
permits out.
you know,
These permits have to be straightened out.
yeah, but we need to get, I mean, do we put a timeline on it for like the next meeting, come and show up with these things, or get them to Kirk before, when he meets on Wednesdays, or?
From listening to him, he wants to get them now.
Yeah.
You know, he's not gonna, you're not gonna drag these permit things out.
No, there's no reason to.
So,
I
I mean,
would say it needs to be an agenda item. Yeah, you know, so, I mean, it says discussion with, it doesn't
Right, so just.
know that a decision is gonna be made, so I think that it's just confirming that the conditions of approval.
yeah, so I would
So
say
it
that,
need to be, you know, on the agenda, that a decision would be made. Instead, cause it doesn't say what it's gonna be made tonight. We can ask for what we want.
and then have him come to the next meeting and present the gray area feedback on the site specifics, where you are, and basically all the bond things and all that stuff. Like if you can, I mean, is there a way you can get some numbers to him so he can get some, like, on the,
But typically, as far as the numbers for the construction of the road, that's typically provided by the, in this case, previous applicant or applicant in regards to the construction of the road. And then, Mike and I would look at it and make sure we had, different background as far as for estimating site work, so, make sure it's reasonable numbers and, because we'll, with those numbers, so that's not an issue at all. But as far as for the engineering, inspections and stuff, it doesn't bother me either way, I have more than enough stuff to do. And if the board's not comfortable, if there's board members who aren't comfortable with me doing it, it doesn't, there's no love lost, it doesn't bother me at all. So it really doesn't.
Yes.
so, what does the board wanna do with that? Because obviously, if we come in, he comes into the next meeting with answers to the site-specific alteration of terrain stuff and everything like that, and the board right now says we'd rather keep Kirk as what he's doing and overseeing it, and we hire Cliff Harbor or somebody like that, does the town call them up, or does the developer call them up and say, hey, can you look for this for the
Hired by
town?
the town.
So that's something you have to call on Kirk and say, hey, can you do this for us?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so exactly, so the inspecting engineering firm being billing the town.
They work for the town.
They're working for the town, the town's the one who's writing the check, they know no different. Other than I think everybody who does work for the town knows that there's some sort of escrow account set up for getting a check. Money's coming in, money's going back out, so even though, the developer is paying for it, it's actually the town who's the one who is the client.
Client. And that's why I didn't see an issue with her doing it, because, it's like he's contracted by the town anyway.
I guess I'd feel more comfortable with Kurt calling another company to come in and just take care of it. And then we're not touching anything from anybody.
I agree.
Alright, that looks like it's the majority right there on getting that, so Kirk, if you can make a couple calls to a few firms that might be someone to review and oversee the road going in for the town's interest, and then you can still, if there's any questions from the board members or anything, you can be there as,
Is there a preference as far as for who to use for that? Because typically you don't do, you're not looking for proposals back as far as, you're not bidding it out.
yeah, you can call them up. I mean, I would say, right now, this time of year, everyone's busy, it doesn't matter, I don't know who to find, you got SVE, you got TF Moran, you got Meridian, you got all kinds of companies out there.
Yeah.
Cliff Harbor, they're all,
Busy.
So I would say whichever one feels good tomorrow when you're here and you wanna call them up. I don't think it's, you just want someone to do it.
Yeah, also, obviously, I wanna make sure that we're being treated fairly on price and all that, so somebody, don't just get one number from the high guy and then make you pay a silly price on it,
No, actually, I think they're all pretty much the same.
They're $250 an hour, not a lot.
Yeah, as
Well,
long
he's
as
the
you-
most expensive, so I saved you some money.
I'm not sure what happened here, but it's $250 an hour, I can tell you now.
So what meeting are we talking about, then we're talking September 3rd, which is the day after Labor Day? Or are we talking August 20th, which is 2 weeks from now?
Well, their next,
Meeting is gonna be too quick, so I think.
the next meeting is obviously the next 2 weeks, so if we have something that's coming, obviously that's the next meeting,
20th.
would be the 20th.
But I guess that if you think of it from a conditions of approval standpoint, you've got the performance guarantee calculation numbers, unless the board wants to okay those numbers, if you do, that's fine. The escrow In other words, I guess what I'm looking at is the, 5 or 6 items that you have, does it need, if we get a letter that says he doesn't need alteration of terrain stamp from an engineering firm, that takes, in other words, the board really need to see it. The performance bond numbers are in gold, goes with Mike. The escrow numbers are the escrow numbers, you get a price back, that says, that's what's gonna cost for the inspections, and you check for that amount. It's pretty easy to see whether the homeowners association document gets recorded or not. I don't think the board needs to see that for the page. In other words, I'm looking at it as from a standpoint of conditions of approval, which is what he's really doing, is meeting those
Right.
conditions of approval.
So,
And never come back to the board for that, because they really need to come back to the board.
yeah, I would just say that I would say the most important thing, obviously, I mean, is that 100,000 square feet, if we can get some kind of letter that documents that, so if it ever comes back at the town saying, this guy built this thing and didn't do it, we have documentation to back up why it got done like this, so it's not like they approved that project for this reason and that and whatever. So if they feel comfortable drawing something up that basically describes, why it equals less than what it did back then, then obviously, Kurt will have it, he'll send an email out or something saying, this is what we got or whatever, and obviously the other criteria is stuff that's gonna have to get done.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm fine with that, if the board's fine with that, obviously Kurt can kind of oversee what's happening on that department and give us feedback, and obviously if something doesn't add up to what it needs to be, then you're gonna have to follow through on getting that permit through the state, so.
So basically, we're talking about the oversight for this, going through the planning office.
That's where it's gonna come through, because if he sends emails through, it's gonna come to the planning director, so, I mean, and as well as him touching base with a third-party engineer to review the road, so. And then discussing with Mike on the bonds and everything else. So, alright, everyone good with that? Yep. Alright, well, we'll appreciate you coming to the board, and, we'll roll up these papers and move on to the next item here.
Thank you. You want those plans? It doesn't matter to you.
I'll actually take, they'll at least give us something on the file.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell Craig to email me the plans.
Jonah, no questions?
From the public, I mean, it's really we could take feedback,
Well,
I mean,
can I just say on, first letter to, Andre?
Yeah.
Number 4, third sentence. He wrote, I reviewed the plans briefly, and it does not appear that any zoning or regulation changes have effect, on the approval, so I don't believe you need to reapply. Well, we did have a change, I mean, the impact fee. Now, when we applied in 2007, we had an impact fee.
Yeah.
2 years ago, okay, we got rid of it.
Yeah.
So, in the way I'm reading this, there is a change, so
Yeah.
we should be reapplying for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it says right here, I don't believe you need to reapply. Well, there was a change, so I think he does need to reapply or pay the impact fee for all those homes. One or
There's
the
no
other.
impact fee anymore.
I know, but, I mean, that's a good
Just
point,
go away.
that's a good point, obviously, we don't have that thing there, and going back to, bringing this back into discussion now that Andre's gone.
Well, I had my, I kept
No, I know,
on
I'm
my
sorry, I didn't see it, you
That's all
should've
right,
just
that's
waved to
okay.
me.
But that would be every subdivision.
Well, no, because I just wanna say something, because that project, that Cromwell one that I took over, it got approved with that, and I had to come in and submit for the board to say it does not fall under that criteria of the impact fee and waive that,
That
because
was
that's the way
different.
it was approved.
No, that was different. There was no impact fee. Had
And
not,
then there was, I don't know.
there, when that was approved, no, but that was approved with specific impact fee before the impact fee had been adopted. So that was not part of the impact fee
That's,
ordinance going away.
Yeah,
So
so
this-
it's what that was done on Cromwell,
Yeah.
that was a negotiated thing between the
Yes.
planning board and ULaw
oh,
to
yeah.
pay an impact fee. There was no
there
impact
was
fee
nothing
ordinance
there.
whatsoever, there
Oh,
was
yeah.
no ordinance whatsoever.
To do what he did.
You got that at auction. you got that at the land
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
auction.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
still,
at
there was
that
something
time,
that I
there
had to deal with
Yeah.
on it.
But it was still subject to the conditions, the subdivision approval
Yeah.
conditions.
So now does that, I mean, Kurt, I'm gonna ask Kurt now, does basically, so because it got approved with them then, and now we don't have them, where does that stand?
So it would be similar to, the way that I would look at it, it'd be similar to saying that at the time of approval, you had 2 acre zoning. And they were all 2 acre lots. And then we changed the zoning to 1.5 acre zoning. Saying you have to come back in. In other words, it's less stringent. So it no longer, so it's said, because you had an impact fee ordinance at the time, that's why it was, in fact, up until it discontinued, that you had an impact fee of the $5,726 per single family home. But that ordinance went away, but that's less stringent, so the impact fee goes away. It's not anything that affects the lot sizes, whether you can build a house, the width of the roadway, that type of stuff. So it doesn't affect that at all from that standpoint. So it doesn't affect your estimate.
Well,
Now, if you change the
I'm
impact
ready.
fee to increase it from what it was,
Correct.
that would have an impact, that would require him to come back in, don't you think?
Or he would just have to pay that
Or
impact.
pay
He
the
would pay that, say it went to $8 grand or whatever. He would
Well,
just
what
have-
I'm trying to get at is
Yeah.
Andre owned that land way back when,
Yeah,
2004, 2005, and
yeah.
he still owns it.
Yeah.
But when you
Yeah.
got yours at auction.
Yeah.
Dan Aho owned
Yeah.
it, but it changed names,
Yeah.
it wasn't the same person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, it changed, you bought it.
Yeah.
You know, when there was no impact fee, when
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was no
Yeah.
impact,
Yeah.
Dan didn't. But all I'm saying here is number 4, that there doesn't appear to be any zoning or regulation changes, but there was. And then of course it said, I don't believe you need to reapply. And if he's not gonna pay the impact fees, then he should
Yeah, well, maybe
reapply.
that's,
Unless you're granting
Yeah.
him a waiver.
no,
I
maybe
know.
that's something we could just bring up. to
No,
him.
there is no impact fee anymore, it doesn't, we have other subdivisions that were approved when there was the impact fee that says, and they all said it, and they went away. We can't collect something that is no longer in effect, if the zoning
2007.
ordinance doesn't exist anymore.
I'm not asking that collect
Yeah.
fee.
All right, well,
I
it's
just,
not,
I'd like to just comment on it.
Okay.
yeah,
Seeing as I wrote it, I'd like to be able to
yeah, go ahead,
address
Kurt.
what was stated on it, rather than having interpretation of what was written when I'm sitting right here. So, number 4, it says, looks like there's a typo in condition number 4 and number 5 are one. That's because halfway through the paragraph, there's also number 5. Okay, it's a typo, and that's all I was pointing out. So that condition, 4 and 5, this is there in regards to vesting, which was not met. Okay, so now we're talking about vesting, or I'm talking about vesting. So, in regards to vesting, I reviewed the plans briefly, and does not appear that any zoning or regulation changes have any effect on the approval in regards to vesting, which it doesn't, so I don't believe you need to reapply. So in regards to vesting, there's nothing that changes what he's approved for. That doesn't affect vesting impact fees. It doesn't affect vesting.
I don't see it that way, but okay.
Well, it would be the same thing as the phasing schedule. This thing was subject to Rindge phase development ordinance. If the phase development ordinance was gotten rid of, then there is no ordinance for it to be in accordance with. And that's what happened with the impact fee ordinance. There is no longer an impact fee ordinance. And it says subject to, and there isn't one anymore, so.
Yeah, when I first read through this, I had that same thought. But then when you go back through all this, there's nothing on impact fees in there, so there's nothing that we can use to carry that forward because it doesn't exist. And that was one of the first things I says, oh, impact fees, it's like, oh.
All right, well, let's move on here, sorry, thank
No,
you
no,
for bringing
thank
it
you.
up, and
Thank you.
obviously I didn't see your hand, you got one more question here?
Sure. I think the town needs to do something about PERDs in residential and agricultural zoning. The two things in town regulations do not mesh. So here we have another PERD going in on res ag zoning. And res ag zoning does not permit that kind of situation. So as a planning board, this really needs to be readdressed.
But it's already approved. I mean, the project's approved already.
The project is approved, and many other projects have been approved, but it does not meet our zoning regulations. Okay?
I think that'll be settled in court shortly, but.
Yep.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, if that's something we need to take a look at, we'll do our next review of our zoning regs.
Yeah.
We just add that, you gotta.
Yeah, I know, there's been a lot of stuff that's just starting around with all this
Yeah.
stuff, believe me.
Yeah.
I mean, alright, so we're gonna move on here, thank you for the input discussions on it here, so, planning office report here, follow up on, map 2, lot 41-2, unpermitted site plan activities occurring on property located at northwest corner of intersection of Rand Road, US Route 202. Kurt, you wanna kinda fill us in on where we are with that? Obviously, there was a letter sent out there, and then there was another letter sent out with a cease and desist order.
I don't even know where the whole thing started, to be honest with you.
I have another update. I talked to Dave.
So trying to think what, it's map 2, lot 41-2, it's on the, like I said.
Yeah.
It's on the, or no, it's on the northeast, or northwest corner of the intersection of Rand Road and, 202.
Between Rand and Hanover.
Correct. So that was, cleared, how long was it, last fall?
Last fall.
Regraded, basically more or less made into a flat gravel area using on-site materials. And then sometime in the spring, a bunch of materials showed up there and was stored on the site. And then 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe, they started building the buy boxes, is that how you say it? Buy boxes were started to be constructed on the site. July 31st, so last Wednesday, Dave wrote a letter to the landowner, which is Tim Halliday. I guess I could just read it. Cease and desist order, map 2, lot 41-2, dear Mr. Halliday, by virtue of my position as the code enforcement officer of the town of Rindge, I order you to cease and desist the continued violation of the town of Rindge site plan review regulations by allowing the storage of materials and the assemblage of aluminum storage containers on the property located at Rand Road and US Route 202. As I cautioned you in my May 3rd, 2019 letter, and again on June 3rd, 2019, you excavated this property adjacent to the nearby wetlands without having received any review and approval from the Rindge Planning Board. You also used this property to store aluminum materials on it and are now allowing a tenant to assemble aluminum storage containers on the property. Inasmuch as you have absolutely no authority to use this property for these activities, I urge you to cease and desist any further activity on this property until you have sought and obtained approval from the Rindge Planning Board, as is required by the regulations of the town of Rindge, as authorized by New Hampshire RSA 674-43 and RSA 674-44. Yours truly, Dave Duvernay. Copied us, the planning board, and the board of selectmen, and Mr. Jameson Van Dyke. As I believe it's, Jamie Van Dyke, in some way, shape, or form, is the one putting together the my boxes. I have an email from Evie Goodspeed, who is Tim's office manager. She's, I'll just read the whole thing. She says, hi Kirk, I can't find a planning board email, and Tim wanted me to send this out for tonight's meeting. Jamie Van Dyke contacted me back when the roads were posted about needing a place to store some metal buildings. that he had to take delivery of. I agreed to allow him to store them on the Rand Road lot. Later, he had my box delivered to the same site on Rand Road without my knowledge or approval. Shortly thereafter, he started putting the boxes together. I've spoken to Dave Duvernay about this, and all my boxes are in the process of being removed from the property. They're relocated at 58 or 202 Rindge. But please let me know if you have any further questions to tell. That's the update that I have.
What is 58, 202?
The Van Dyke, the old Van Dyke construction site. Which,
So how does that play into like the site plan over there too, because I heard like there's dirt and dump trucks and all kinds of stuff going on over there, reshaping that whole thing for this whole program of making like, you know, manufacturing going on over there. And this right here, I've been contacted a few times, I've been down talking to Dave a few times, and obviously finally I got to this right here. And I feel, and hopefully the board feels this way too, obviously what happened over there on that property, we seen it got cleared, we seen it got leveled, we see no protection of any wetlands or conservation on it all. We seen storage of materials get put there, and now the manufacturing's going on over there, we have this letter that comes in here. So, there's other properties like this in town that have been sent letters on, and nobody seems to address it, and it comes back to the same property owner, Ken Halliday. So, right now, I think he needs to come to the town with a plan, bringing us up to speed, according to the land use committee, of where he's at. We haven't seen anything since he's done it. There's other hidden gems across the street that Dave went and witnessed, storage things going on out there that you can't see, that stuff's happening on. And obviously, you know, we as a board, people will contact me, I come here, I get a hold of Kirk, and Kirk's like, we'll go down and talk to Dave. I go talk to Dave, and we're in just a big goat trail, and now it's 4 months past since I've been seeing this happen. Now we have manufacturing that started going on over there. So, I mean, I'm glad that they put a cease and desist on it. We need another letter. I mean, I guess Dave's the only one to say it, that the town, I mean, I don't know how many letters we have to send them to say, please come to the town with a plan and bring us up to speed on what you are doing. You know, I mean, I don't know what the feedback is on the board, but, you know, I don't wanna be the only one that's getting tagged with these things and, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, there's been other properties in town that it feels like some people get targeted and others don't, and I think that the enforcement needs to be level across the board. Because we have regulations that are in here that people need to follow. They can do all these activities on their property if they own them, if they follow the criteria. What they do follows the criteria. What they do when they don't come in and show us what they're doing doesn't follow the criteria. So that's where I'm at, and obviously I'm glad this is there, but with this being pulled off, there's another can of worms opening up on the other side of town right now that I got a call on this week, and I didn't have a chance to go by there. There's been dump truck moving in and out of there, and equipment and everything else, because now they're gonna start the manufacturing over there. I don't know what the town has for a site plan for that property, the old Van Dyke building on the Jafford Ridge line. So I'm just like, you know, I think if we have regulations, I mean, we've had other people that are landowners in the town coming to and saying, hey, listen, I got a piece of land, this guy wants to rent it, he has log trucks, this is what our plans are. Board looks at it, says, yeah, just do this, this, and this, get a driveway permit in there, clear it, and they can lease the land from you, we know what's going on. When stuff starts happening, when it's part of the property, even if they own it, that's fine if it meets the regulations, but I think that the board should know, because that's why we have these. So I'll take feedback from anybody.
Well, Van Dyke's property is, you know, it's been an operating business for years.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I mean, is it now, I mean,
And it's,
from what I hear,
a
they're,
junkyard.
yeah, no, they're clearing it, I didn't know if they're just cleaning it up or
Oh,
what,
they're
but there's
cleaning,
machine,
yeah, they're
there's,
just cleaning it out.
I know, but did they start building these things over there? Is all this stuff going over there?
It
is going over there.
Yeah, it's taking.
They started
everything
moving it
out.
over there today. Or at least, they didn't take anything from the Rand Road property, they took it from somewhere else. I've got pictures, I'm the abutter on the other side of the
Can you,
road.
sorry,
My name's Tim Russo.
yeah, okay, what was your name?
Tim Russo,
Okay.
so I'm the property owner across the street
From where? Oh, on Rand?
on Rand.
Oh, I
I own
thought-
the 3 fam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, where Susan lives.
Susan is, yes, my tenant.
Okay, Sam?
Tim is the local business owner. He knows all about this planning board. Send him a letter, bring us up to speed.
or bring some plans.
Bring some
I mean,
plans.
everybody else has to bring plans.
If he knows, then why does he keep trying to do this stuff?
I'm
That's
not
what
sure,
goes on.
'cause
Well, he didn't do it, Jamie Van Dyke is the
No,
one that's been doing it.
I'm talking about, we're going way beyond the mini boss stuff.
Yeah,
You
back
know,
up the last part.
the leveling the land, not getting a permit, there's a driveway cut
Wait a minute,
in.
wait a minute, wait a minute, you can clear a house lot,
Can you put a driveway in without a driveway permit?
there was a driveway there.
No, there wasn't. I watched him cut the.
He got a temporary permit
There's
for
two
log
driveways.
with it, and then
Yeah.
he used that for his driveway.
Yeah,
So it
because
was
there's a
temporary.
right of way that goes on, continues on, it's not a logging road. In fact, it goes on
Through the
to,
swamp, one through the swamp, then
it goes clear up to
updated
Hannaford's.
driveway.
Yeah, it's stone walls on both sides all the way.
But that doesn't mean it's a driveway.
No, it's a logging road.
And you can bring a logging road up to a driveway or a road specs.
I don't know, I know that,
Put it this way,
but you
that's-
can clear a lot,
I'm not complaining about the lot being cleared.
yeah.
so, I mean, I do have a problem with the fact that obviously it got cleared, you can get an intent to cut, you can log, you can cut the trees down, no
You
problem.
don't need one for
No
a
problem.
lot.
No, you can do that, that's no problem.
I
The
don't think
problem
anyone's
is, you go
arguing.
there and you excavate, you level the whole thing, there's nothing for any kind of drainage set up when there's swamps
There's
all
no
around
silt
that thing.
fences put up.
I'm just,
DES was out there,
Is there paperwork on that?
I don't know, it's.
Well, I don't know.
he went
I'm
out
just-
So
there.
then how do you know?
I was out there when DES was
did
there
you approve
once.
something about
Okay.
No, I just happened to be there.
you've got Holly.
Go ahead,
and Tim,
alright, go ahead, Kim.
Okay, I had stopped in and had a conversation with Kurt, because over the past few weeks, I've been driving by, because I ran an apartment, and I've seen the changes have gone on here, so I said, Kurt, what's going on? And he told me what's going on, the first thing I said was, why hasn't he had a cease and desist? He's doing something, he hasn't gone through the process he's supposed to go through, why has he not received a cease and desist? And then he said, well, I just talked to Dave and he's gonna go take care of it. Clearly, there needs to be some type of a conversation about what should be going on here. And if he's received a cease and desist, doesn't that mean he has to stop what he's doing and come in?
No,
That's
he's
my
moving the
understanding.
stuff.
Well, it
30
says,
days, isn't it?
it says right here, I mean, it's like, I mean, I think it's more than that, because it's like,
If he's beginning manufacturing on the 58 US Route 202 site, he needs a, is it called a change of use, you need a site plan.
That's what I was just
Yeah.
wondering.
It's not that difficult, he knows it, you know it.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what he's doing up there, I know he's just cleaning it out right now.
so what I'm saying is, right now it happened on this land, now it's going to somewhere else, and then, you know, and on, so I don't know who has the authority, does the board have to go to the selectmen and tell the selectmen, like, at a meeting, like, from the planning board, like, this needs to be done, because obviously the selectmen are over the boards, and obviously, to say this needs to be done to come to the board, because obviously Dave's letters for Tim, prior to all this happening, never got any paperwork to the board to say, yeah, guys, I'm sorry, I didn't do a plan on it, but this is what I'm using it for, and now this is where we're at, and now it's moving up the road. I mean, obviously, change of use is a change of use, if it's permitted in that area, I think that the board should know about it. Go ahead, Holly.
I just have a question regarding, I know that, I had seen prior DES instances on the Conservation Commission's agenda, violations and stuff. Is there a place, do we have, as a planning board, do we get a copy of that? Cause I can't find them on the state website. I know, I've had a lot of people asking me, what's going on over there? Like,
I haven't seen, I haven't
I
seen
don't know, but I
anything
know
from
they've been
DES
on the
that
agenda
property.
multiple times, Concom.
I just know that for years you couldn't bike across that,
You could what?
you couldn't bike across that for years.
Hmm.
I grew up right across the street.
Yeah, cause I'm seeing, I mean, there's
I've
like
only
three that I
been
know,
across the street
DES
since
violations,
96.
and there
The
was,
thing's covered, it's that logging road is always underwater until August. Then it dries out for a couple of months and then it's always underwater. That whole property right around there is all swamp. My house behind my house is all swamp. If I could may, back to the letter that Tim wrote about, Van Dyke needing a piece of land to put his stuff during the posted of the roads. I'm at my property quite a bit. None of those mini box storage things were ever brought while the roads were posted. That stuff all showed up like Dave's letter indicated approximately 3 weeks ago.
Correct.
So that letter that Tim wrote, it's bullshit. Nothing was brought there other than that steel building that was there. I don't know when that showed up, but it showed up after snow.
So, thank you. Obviously, how does the board wanna address this? Obviously, there's a few, you know, few of these things floating around here, and obviously, if Dave's letter is not doing anything for him coming in and showing us what his plans are with the property, where do we go from here? Because obviously, on here it says May 3rd, June 3rd, and this one's dated July 31st. And obviously, when the machinery went in there to start clearing the land from a logging place to leveling it flat and not having any protection up for the wetlands and making a swamp road into a passable driveway, obviously, we should have had plans and we never got anything. So, I mean, I think that they need to play by the same rules everybody else does.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, I mean, go ahead.
Didn't you just establish some kind of a fine, $125 per day fine for people who are in violation?
Do you have something like that in the?
Is that something from
Not
the,
that I,
is
not
that
off the
building
top of my
department?
head.
Are you talking
Is
about?
that code enforcement or building or another department?
But I do vaguely remember that there's something somewhere, I just, I
Yes,
couldn't tell you.
well, Mr. Duvernay and I had a discussion about this on a
Cause I asked him the same thing.
related issue with one of these individuals. And he said, well, I won't say exactly, but I am aware that there is a fine, a per day fine, and I wanna say it's $125. Until the town starts to enforce this, you're probably gonna keep having issues in town with people who continually violate regulations. So,
Yeah, I know that he sent, a different situation, he sent a letter out to somebody that's, basically has a junkyard in the backyard. And, the fine, the way it was written, that by now it's $10,000. However, it went to court today, and the most the court will award is maximum of $1,300, even though it's been, you know, if you add the fine up the way it's written, so.
Why should it go to a point where it has to go to court?
No, this was something, this
No,
was
I know
not-
the story you're talking about, because Dave told me the same story. Why does it have to get to the point that the town has to go to court over something
To
like
enforce.
4 junk cars? Why can't there be some sort of, enforcement within the town that can require this? It's just like the whole thing with,
Well,
I asked Dave on this cease and desist, I said, who is policing this? Did you put a time limit on it? And he said, no. I had a conversation with Tim and asked him to please finish what you're doing and get it off the property. I said, is that in writing? No. So that's a verbal agreement between Dave and Tim Halliday. How can a town official have a verbal agreement with someone and not document it? That's what's so irritating about this whole thing, and like you're saying, all this shit's happening around the town and no one's doing anything about it, and the same damn people are doing it.
So, I mean, obviously, I think,
Anyway, the point is that we fined,
you just
assessed a fine that was not paid and it was ignored. The answer is,
Right.
you have to go to court.
so right now, I don't know if we can do a verbal, like, just kinda like aye, or whatever, but I think that as landowner Tim Halliday, needs to come to the board by the next meeting with a plan showing what his intentions are with that property, that basically got
Which
to the
one?
point, property right here, that's got
Oh.
a cease and desist on it, okay? That's that's what we're talking about right now. Obviously, because it's at the point of this right now, they're moving stuff off it, but we have to give a timeline and a date, because right now, nobody's doing anything. You know, I mean, I've been downstairs talking to Dave many times over some of these other things, and I mean, it's a long night already, we'll bring him up at the next meeting, but, no, I'm serious, it's ridiculous, because if he's a code enforcement, he ain't doing squat. You know, I mean, why do we have him? You know, if he's supposed to be enforcing our regulations, he's not enforcing the regulations, like, no timeline. It's like most other cities have a timeline that says, this is the criteria, if you don't do this, this is what happens. And you can't just have a hearsay, this is a letter right here, this looks good, but if this could be, you know, November, we still come over there and it's like, oh, we had to put all our sand there for our next, you know, I mean, we ran into one down the road where Philip Stenison came in, he was using the property over there, we made him go through a whole thing, and basically almost started the same way this thing started, and he had to come in with a full set of, I mean, exactly what he was doing and everything else, where,
Get approval.
you know, yeah, approval, and quarter mile down the road, this one can happen and nobody says anything. So, I don't know if there's a way, Kirk, that a board can just basically make a verbal, you know, like in agreement that we would like to see something by the next meeting on what's happening with the property, or something, because obviously if these emails don't line up to what was said in documentation, I don't know, I mean, I think the enforcement is not too good. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is I pondered this question quite a bit since back in the day when I was on the Board of Adjustment, is that, so the selectmen are the enforcement authority for anything in town here. Not necessarily personally. Code enforcement is considered an arm of the selectmen.
That's what I'm saying.
So it's his job to do the selectmen's bidding with respect to this kind of stuff. So it begs the question, who's gonna make them? You know, the police gonna show up there and arrest him? If it's not that, then it's probably some kind of a court action,
That's what
which is probably a lot more appropriate. So, I mean, as a board,
Well, I mean,
we don't have the enforcement authority. We can vote and offer an opinion to say, you need to do something about this,
Yeah.
but I don't know what else we could do.
That's what's irritating, because right now you have regulations and things that are approved by the townspeople that go into our ordinances, and then if they don't follow the criteria, nobody's saying anything, and then if it ends up going to court, and it's just like, you just keep plowing your own trail. It's like, this is gonna happen more and more, because the other guy's gonna say, listen, he's saying screw you to that and just did whatever he wanted to, and it's just gonna keep pushing the snowball down the road. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's another one right here, what's the address of that thing, 51, you know,
58.
58, so it's like, what's gonna happen there? If they change a use from being a machine shop with equipment on it to a manufacturing facility, doesn't change use of a property, I mean, does that require a letter to say, hey, come and tell us what you're doing? I think so, you know? I mean,
It's, yeah, it depends on,
Go ahead.
Dave usually
So
decides.
back
if
to
it's
what he's
similar.
saying, it sounds to me like there's nothing the town legally can do to this guy. Based on what you're saying, nobody can go in there and force him to do anything. That's what I'm hearing.
Not at the town level.
Well, if you can't at the town level,
But the town,
what level?
the town has the authority, it's legally binding, but it has to be done through the courts.
Yes, it has
I
to
mean,
be.
if they call our bluff and they say, we ain't gonna do it,
Yeah.
it has to be court action then.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Most of the time, this right
Makes
here,
sense, I understand.
this right here puts someone that's at a human level, respectable, would come to the town when they receive something like this. If they're respectable, they would come to the town and they'd say, here's my plans, I'm sorry, I knew all through this. I mean, and if you just keep doing it, that's why I said, that if the selectmen are over the code enforcement authority, then a letter needs to be written or made aware to the selectmen, you know, that we need to do something about it or, I don't know. It's kinda like you're stuck between a nut and a hard place, because these things are gonna keep happening if, you know, I mean, I don't know, it's kinda tough. Go ahead,
Can I
Molly.
ask a question, Judy? Were you referring to the $150 a day? Was it for the building department? Cause I'm looking at something.
What
It
do
was
you have out there,
$100
cause
a
I'm
day.
trying to find it in my notes and I'm not finding
It
it.
was $100 a day in violation. Is that what they were talking from the
That's Bill's now.
Okay.
Site plan review regulations,
Thank you.
I thought it came under planning board regulations, and I thought it was something that was just
He's saying,
recently done.
Kirk's reading it.
Site plan regulations, last page of site plan regulations, penalties, as provided in New Hampshire revised statutes annotated and as amended, chapter 676, section 17, any person who violates any of the provisions of these site plan review regulations or any provision or specification of any application, plat, or plan approved by, or any requirement or condition of a permit or decision issued by the planning board shall be guilty of a misdemeanor if a natural person, or guilty of a felony if any other person, shall be subject to a civil penalty of $275 for the first offense, $550 for subsequent offenses. For each day that such violation is found to continue after the conviction date or after the date on which the violator receives written notice from the town that the violator is in violation, whichever is later. Each day that the violation continues shall be a separate offense.
Question.
You read that.
So is the first day of written notice, would that be the first day that the letter was issued on May 3rd?
And does that
Gotta
mean
have time.
written notice from the
Receive
planning
it,
board or
read
it.
other
Are we talking-
jurisdiction?
Right.
Well, we can't do it because he's the enforcement authority, that's why we.
No, this is a site plan regulation.
It's-
That's correct.
Yeah, it's still, but it's still enforced by the
It's by the code
code
enforcement.
enforcement, yeah.
See,
The next one above it, number 5, says enforcement. These regulations shall be enforced by the Board of Selectmen acting by and through its duly authorized representative, if any.
So the
So it's
last
still a
page.
code.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's enforcement is done by it. So it definitely, and we've said it all along, our hands are tied, or your guys' hands are tied as the planning board. We approve these plans, and whether someone follows them or not, there's nothing you can do about it.
not on the planning board level.
Nope, not at the planning board level, that falls to the selectmen, enforcement of the.
Which means that it's our responsibility to forward that information to the board of selectmen. And bring it up in a public meeting, and that hasn't happened.
I have a meeting tomorrow night.
But why,
But
Exact-
then the selectmen have to make a decision about leveling the fines, and it's not, from what you're saying, between selectmen and code enforcement, that's where the decision gets made about taking that step, and then that process gets started.
But code enforcement is the selectmen.
I understand that, but
That's
the
the purpose.
the selectmen also need to be informed about
So,
code enforcement. is
At this time, I think that, Kurt, tomorrow, if you could draft up a letter from the board, the planning board or something, basically maybe saying like, to the board of selectmen, from the planning board, saying we have these issues on our hand that we feel like need to be enforced a little bit more strongly, because we got letters dating back to May 3rd, and that obviously we need to have people follow kind of the criteria that we have written in our ordinances and regulations that aren't being followed. And that obviously, if he's not doing his job, I've been down there like 4 times talking to him about it, and it's just like, nothing's happening. So, I mean, obviously, and it doesn't make good sense or feeling in the town when people are not following rules and nobody does anything about it, because then the other guy feels like, who cares, I'm just gonna do it anyways. And it's just like, most of the stuff that's happening is permitted in that land if they would just come and say, this is what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? Especially on these areas right here. I mean, that's all the whole corridor of 202 and them areas are designed to take this kind of impact. I mean, whether it's industrial, building something, commercial, light industry, whatever it may be. Go ahead.
So as a residential property owner on Ram Road with knowing the zoning in that area, fully understand that I'm in that, call it mixed use or whatever you wanna call it. I'll give a great example of on Hunt Hill Road where the Academy Roofing is. Beautiful building. They maintain that thing, that was tastefully done. You've got residents right across the street. I wouldn't wanna choose to live across from that, but if it happened to be there and it was done that way, they spent the money, they did it right, it looks good. You come around the corner on Ram Road, you pull out of my driveway, you see that pile of steel, you see all that stuff. He didn't get any permits from day one to do anything that he's done there. Dave told me that yesterday on the phone. This letter says he didn't get any permits. So what, you said you were on the property with DES?
I just, they were there.
They were there?
I didn't talk to them,
Who
but,
called them?
You seen him?
yeah, I don't know if Tim called them or somebody was out there.
Tim did call
Oh, yeah,
BS on
that's-
himself.
Oh, that's good, yeah, that's, yeah.
So there's a lot of confusion around here,
But that's,
what
this
you're
sounds, this
saying
was a long time ago.
How long
Conservation Commission on site plan.
So, I mean, I'm just saying that.
because I know there's two, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's two issues here. There's the mini box storage with the cease and desist, which is kind of what poked the sleeping bear. You know, I didn't say anything, I introduced myself to Tim back in the fall when he was clearing the lot, cutting in the driveway, walked over, said, hi, I'm Tim Russo. I've actually known him before because I've rented stuff from him, but introduced myself again, asked him what he was doing. It really wasn't clear. He didn't sound like he had a definite plan. I thought to myself, actually said, good luck with it. He sounded like he wanted to build something and sell it or lease it or whatever. Good luck. I walked away thinking to myself, I must have missed the letter that the town sent to me, because how can somebody do this without permits? So I took it, I assumed he had permits to do what he was doing. I'm a contractor, to see the extent of stuff that he did there, I know you need permits, I'm not an idiot. And so when I didn't get the letter, I just assumed I ignored it, because I'm a busy person, I didn't think anything of it. And then you hear through the grapevine that he didn't get any permits and all this stuff. I said, all right, well, he must have got caught, he's gonna go through the proper process to get it done right. Then this showed up 3 weeks ago, I'm over there, and I'm like, that's it. I can't, my tenants are gonna leave because they're looking at that. If he did it tastefully and they were packed on the other side of the, you know what I mean? If he did something that was decent about it, spent some money on the property and did it right, I probably wouldn't have a problem with it. But like you said, this is happening everywhere, and it sounds like it's the same people doing it.
Well, I mean, it's just that, you know, obviously, we have a book right here that has regulations with it.
Right.
If you wanna do something to your link, to your property,
And you follow the rules, I have
just
no
come in
problem.
with a plan, just like everybody else does.
Right.
That's all we're asking, fill out the application, come on in, have a consultation, just like Mr. Aho did.
Right.
Say, hey, this is what my plan is, obviously, it feels like we're in a little bit of hot water right here, but what can we do about it? That's what we want. Representation, you know, yeah, so I'm just, you know, what is it, can we have some kind of letter sent to the selectmen and basically ask that, or where do we go from here? I mean, we're still kinda stuck like under the bridge with no hat, something.
So I think everybody knows Tim's a friend of mine, but I tell him all the time that he's got to do something, about some other properties that, you know, he's gonna do a site plan. The Brand Road property, he was planning, he doesn't know whether he's gonna sell it or not, but he was waiting because there's two pieces of property there. You know, it's 2 lots. So he was waiting to find out whether he was gonna have to do a access through Hanford's to get to the other.
Well, I mean, right now, obviously, I'm not.
He did talk to you, Renee, about clearing it. He said he didn't need a permit to clear it. So,
Did he more than clear it?
Yes,
Did he do more than clear it?
yeah, so anyways,
Yeah, we did
obviously
clear
that we're getting closer to.
I don't know,
They
because
cleared
I
the
don't know
Walmart
what.
site too, guess what, they got permits to build the building.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
so I don't know what it looked like before.
so obviously we've hashed this out enough, I think that the board has the same feeling that we just need to have a little bit more stronger enforcement on where the criteria is played here and not special treatment to one person versus the other, that we got rules that are here that need to be followed and applications that need to be filled out, and, with that said.
I absolutely agree, because if he doesn't have to, then I can do whatever I want in my camper.
Yeah, no problem, Sam.
Yeah.
No problem.
And,
I'll expand.
and you said a little more, no, we need enforcement, period.
Yeah, that's all, that's
Period,
the
not
biggest problem.
no need enforcement.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, if we have a department that's for that, then it needs to be used for that.
Right, and
And
maybe
right
that
now,
means,
it's not being
and
used
maybe
for
that
that.
means that we as a board need to step up and do what we're doing now by having a conversation, asking our planning director to draft something,
When it gets
to
to
be submitted to us, to the board of selectmen, so that they have something in writing
It's not gonna end with this.
that says that they need to do something.
Alright, so, back to, go ahead, Holly, sorry.
I'm just, are there lots of other people that are doing this?
Yeah,
Well,
actually, there are.
I mean,
all-
because
Yeah, well,
is it
there's-
actually an enforcement issue where Dave's not doing his job, or is it that the residents just aren't listening.
No, there's other properties, there's two other properties that basically have had letters sent to them. One of them's by the same property owner, the other one's by another property owner that was bought from the same property owner. And nobody has presented anything to the town, or to the board or anybody. And obviously the enforcement is not like me.
Just to talk more about my conversation with Dave, I had two phone conversations with him. The second conversation, he did not like my questions, to the point where he hung up on me. So, and believe me, I was a lot calmer on the phone with him than I am today. So I
Thank
don't
you
feel like I
for
deserve to get
clarifying.
hung up on. But when I was challenging him on his letter of cease and desist regarding the verbal agreement he had with Halliday, that's when he started not liking my questions, the easiest way to put it. And his version of a cease and desist and my version of a cease and desist are not the same. And I think after listening to what your version of a cease and desist, we're on the same page.
I'm on the same page too.
It means stop.
Yeah. I'm on the same page.
Oh, by the way, finish what you're doing and get them off, in a couple of weeks.
Well, I mean,
Doesn't mean-
with that letter being said, one of the property owners or somebody should have been here addressing it, not with an email or something, you just said, hey, listen, this is what's going on. You know, I mean, obviously, so we have a problem in town, nothing's being enforced. So, we're gonna draft a letter, send it to the selectmen and see where that goes. Go ahead.
Okay, just to put it on the record, I too have had issues with Dave Duvernay, with one of the individuals that we're talking about tonight. This was back in November, December. I ended up filing a citizen complaint about Dave Duvernay. And as far as I understand, that was handled. I was questioning whether this individual had a cease and desist order from Duvernay on another property, and Dave would not give me that information. It was after I filed the citizen complaint, and then I went in to see Mr. Duvernay, that he did give me paperwork of the letter that he had sent to the homeowner about the project. So, from me, there's a citizen complaint against the man. Number one, he did not abide by the right to know law. He didn't give me the information I was asking for until after I filed the citizen complaint. Then he gave me the letter. So, I wholeheartedly agree, and I will go on the record, our code enforcer is not doing his job. That's why I think we're in this quagmire, and we are sinking.
Alright, well, I know that obviously we're not the board to be discussing this right here, trying to get the selectmen or something, but obviously we got, we're going on 9 o'clock, we're gonna move over here to Kirk. Thank you everyone who's put in on this discussion, but do you have anything for the planning office report here for us? Updates on Susan or any kind of other stuff or anything, or we just all set?
Nope, you asked about the letter, the updates on Susan.
Alright, so it's 8:53, August 6th still, and we're closing the meeting.
Are we having a meeting in 2 weeks?
You are now.
We'll find out after tomorrow. We're out of here.
Kirk will let us know.
So complicated it is.
Probably the 20th or so, then the day after.
2 weeks. I probably won't even be